So, hello again, everybody, dear friends and truth seekers. Max here again. Today we are diving into a very, very interesting chapter, chapter 9.1. What do we live, or walk upon? The Heliocentrix hoax. After you go through all of this, you will understand why I put the NASA chapter before this, because I needed to create a solid platform on which to stand on, otherwise you wouldn't believe anything I say. Now this will be very intriguing, and I've been waiting a long time to tell you all this information, so let's get into it. Before we do that, we do the usual housekeeping items here with the Amazon website where you can find the book. And again, I remind you, in the book you have the possibility to download all the documentaries and all the information that I have gathered for this writing. Our Rumble channel, still up and running. Please subscribe. Our Brighteon channel, the same. Please give me a like. And same thing with YouTube. I need as many likes as possible, folks, so help me out here, please. Now, this is a chapter or episode that I've been waiting for a long time to tell you about. And it has taken me countless hours of preparation, reading and listening to arrive to this point. As all other matters I touch upon in this book, this one is very controversial. It's in fact so controversial that if absorbed and understood correctly, it should change your life and your perception of your surroundings in a profound manner. We will discuss the real shape of what our scientists, experts and NASA calls the planet. I will argue here that it is actually of a different form and shape, does not at all function as suggested and taught in schools and academia. I will here present a model that works better and makes much more sense than the planet, by only applying common sense and data. Not many people know that the word planet is derived from the Latin word plano, which means flat. That's pretty interesting, isn't it? Another funny coincidence is what I'm going to show you on your screen right here, also in Latin. What could this mean? If you take the word scientific in Latin, you divide it in three words, scientific. The English translation is know that it is fiction. Okay, so what do we make of that? The heliocentric model, the round spherical ball concept, we can call it, has been around for centuries, since the time of Copernicus, in fact, but there has always been pushback for this model. It has in all effect been pushed on us, and the model has indeed been retro-engineered to function according to the model they decided to adopt. Now just look at this incredible newspaper clip from 1900. That wasn't too long time ago. It's really strange how most events I write about mainly occurred in that time, right? The beginning of the 1900s. I'll show you here a newspaper article from Minnesota, April 21st, 1900. Here it says, a man says Earth is round and he may be thrown into prison. What do you say? Let me zoom in here and read to you exactly the statements here highlighted in red. Teaching the damnable and heretical doctrine that the Earth is a sphere. Ebenezer, which is this bloke who is being thrown in jail, and his friends know, of course, that the Earth is as flat as a pancake. You don't say. So what are we looking at here? Now I will argue for a model that demonstrates a non-flat, non-rotating Earth. This does not mean that I am one of those flat Earth nuts that are being hammered by the media and the elites. No, not at all. Have you ever wondered why this specific argument is so trashed by them? Because people like me make good points that cannot be debunked, and thus they need to be censored and ridiculed. Same old CIA and mind control tactic that we have already discussed in the past. Now I will base my discussion here on fact, data, and video evidence that cannot be disputed, as they are, as far as I can tell, the truth. And I will encourage anybody that is following this to make the same experiments and tests that I have done and possibly reach the same conclusion. It is not hard work. Also, some common sense goes a long way. Now, please do not trust anything I say. Let's just let the experts speak for themselves. I'll start with a small clip here with the NASA and the US Army in the clip below. And they must know what they're talking about, right? I mean, they are military and NASA after all. Now this little clip here has been taken out of a 45-minute video documentary that is available for download in the book, as usual, and you can verify it by yourself. This is just a small example of all the points that this man talks about. Let's play this.
Admits flat Earth, document number 2. Propagation of electromagnetic fields over flat Earth. You'll notice that on page 7, it says flat idealized Earth. On page 17, flat Earth. Page 18, flat Earth. Page 28, flat Earth. Page 35, flat Earth. Government admits flat Earth, document number 3, from the U.S. Army, titled An Energy Budget Model to Calculate the Low Atmosphere Profiles of Effective Sound Speed at Night. There's an image in the document where it shows a near and localized sun, crepuscular rays, and a flat Earth. And that again is on page 10. And then if you go to page 16, you see the word flat Earth. Government admits flat Earth, document number 4, put out by the United States Army, titled Computationally Efficient Algorithms for Estimating the Angle of Arrival of Helicopters Using Acoustic Arrays. Let's see what it has to say. On page 17, it says flat Earth. Page 30, flat Earth model. Page 31, flat Earth. Page 35, a flat Earth. Government admits flat Earth, document number 5. This one is from United States Army, titled Adding Liquid Payloads Effects to the 6DOF Trajectory of Spinning Projectiles. Let's see what it has to say. On page 7, it says, assume a flat Earth. These equations assume a flat Earth. Government admits flat Earth, document number 6. This is put out by the United States Army. In fact, it's the same author as document number 5, Gene R. Cooper. And in fact, the title is almost eerily the same. Though what we'll find is that he didn't make any corrections for assuming a flat Earth. But let's read the title. Trajectory Prediction of Spin-Stabilized Projectiles with a Steady Liquid Payload. What does it say? Page 10. It says these equations assume a flat Earth. Why would you assume a flat Earth if you're on a spinning ball? Government admits flat Earth, document number 7, put out by NASA in August of 1988. Derivation and definition of a linear aircraft model. What does it have to say? Let's see here. Well, starting with page 6, it says, this report details the development of the linear model of a rigid aircraft of constant mass flying over a flat, non-rotating Earth. It goes on to say on this same page, by defining the initial conditions of the nominal trajectory for straight and level flight and setting the asymmetric aerodynamic and inertia terms to 0, one can easily obtain the more traditional linear models from the linear model derived in this report. On page 35, it says this report derives and defines a set of linearized system matrices for a rigid aircraft of constant mass flying in a stationary atmosphere over a flat, non-rotating Earth. On page 55, it says, based on assumptions of symmetric mass distributions, symmetric aerodynamics, and straight and level flight. And then on page 102, this report documents the derivation and definition of a linear aircraft model for a rigid aircraft of constant mass flying over a flat, non-rotating Earth. Government admits flat Earth, document number 8, put out by NASA, titled General Equations of Motion for a Damaged Asymmetric Aircraft. And on page 2, it states, in this paper, the rigid body equations of motion over a flat, non-rotating Earth. Government admits flat Earth, document number 9, put out by NASA, titled Predicted Performance of a Thrust-Enhanced SR-71 Aircraft with an External Payload. This was put out in June of 1997. And it states non-rotating Earth. Right there, page 10. And this SR-71 Blackbird has a top speed of 2,193 miles per hour. And it doesn't have to account for a rotation of the Earth, the Coriolis effect, the alleged Coriolis effect, or even the curvature of the Earth.
So, when I tell you that I argue for a model that demonstrates a non-flat, non-rotating Earth, I'm not the only one saying this, okay? These documents are out of the Army and NASA and the biggest experts in the world. So, when in the NASA documentation they talk about a flat, non-rotating Earth, what do they mean then? And these are the people going to space, remember? The people we spoke in the previous chapter. So, yeah, they're lying through their teeth, of course, as usual. Now, I will show you this other adorable interview with this very, very old lady, made by a hero of mine, David Weiss, who is also called Flat Earth Dave. He is one of the luminaries of this community, and I have learned a lot from him, listening to him for several years now. Very, very interesting character. You should follow him. Flat Earth Dave. You can find him online. I will play you this little clip with this little old lady that tells us what she learned in school when she was a child. Here we go.
Ruth, and how old are you today?
102.
102. So you were born in
1918.
1918. And we were just talking, and I asked you what shape the Earth is, and what did you say? What were you taught in school in elementary school?
I was taught in school that the Earth was flat.
And then what do you remember when they changed it to a globe?
Well, when they changed it, I remember when they changed it, but I can't remember the date or anything like that.
And did you believe them?
Yes, I did.
You did. Now,
I was young.
Right, and we all were told by people that we trust.
That's right.
Where did you go to school? Elementary school.
I went to Spur Glen School in Hamden, Connecticut. I lived on a farm and grew up with all kinds of animals. No electricity. A big white farmhouse.
Amazing.
And we had to walk to school. We didn't have a bus to take us to school. We had to walk to school and walk home through all bad weather. It was, living on the farm was a life of, I can't explain it.
So getting back to the flat Earth, you said that you're religious, that
Yes.
you follow the Bible.
Yes, I do.
And are you aware that the Bible is all about the flat Earth? That God put the earth on the footstool and separated the waters from the waters, and created the firmament. If you read Genesis, I'm not the Bible guy. I have friends that are so good at it, but there's over 200 verses in the Bible that refer to a flat earth.
That's right.
And I think there's only one verse that mentions earth as a circle, but just like this table right here, that table is a circle,
Right.
but it's flat.
That's right.
Right. A circle is different than a sphere. A sphere is the same in every direction.
That's right.
The circle of the earth. So how does it make you feel to realize that you were right as a kid?
It makes me feel better.
It does make you feel better, right?
Oh, it makes me feel alive.
Oh my God, that is so true. My whole life, I believe,
Yes.
what I was taught.
That's
and then
right.
when I discovered the flat earth,
I feel better about it.
because we are the center of creation.
That's right.
We are important.
That's right.
We are here.
We are God's children.
Excellent.
Yes.
I will,
I believe in God. I trust God. And when all the problems that are happening in this world today,
I'll give you some good news. A lot of the problems that they report on the news aren't even real.
that's right. That's right.
They're just keeping us in fear.
Keeping up. That's right. That's right. That's right. I understand that. I understand. They just say what they want people to know. They don't care about the Bible. They don't care about life. They only care about I, me, myself, and I. It's a different world.
So the globe deception that a lot of people say, and I believe, is literally by Satan to hide God and
That's
make
right.
people selfish
That's right.
and self-centered and not care and think that there's no consequences for their actions.
Right. I pray every night before I go to bed. And one night things weren't happening right. And I sat up in bed and I said, God, where are you? I need you right now. And I'm beginning to wonder, where is God?
God's right above us in the clouds. The heavens are right here. That's all that there is. And there's not infinite space. Did you know, wait, let me ask you a question, just switching topics a little bit, that we never went to the moon, that was all fake?
Is that right?
That's correct.
I saw that all happening.
Yeah, so did I, and we all believed it, but that was just to reinforce that people to believe they can live on a ball and they could walk on a ball. Nobody's ever been to space because space doesn't exist. There is no space. There's just this world.
Oh, it's such a lie.
It's such a lie, but knowing the lie is like going to a magic
I
show.
woke up.
Yes, that's what we call it. We call it red. This is your moment of waking up.
Oh.
It's when you go to see a magician and you know how the tricks are done, and the magic no longer works on you, and you're free from the illusion. So knowing this is going to free your heart.
Cry.
Yeah, it's okay.
It makes me cry.
Happiness.
Yes.
Tears of
yes,
joy.
Yes. Yes. I know that we were true, and they're hiding us.
Yes, it's good though.
It's good.
It's very good.
Yes. Yes.
All right.
I'm awake.
Yes.
I'm awake.
Awesome. Well, I'm going to end this video now, and I will try to give you some more information. Can you read? Are you able to read?
No.
You're not able to read.
No.
Are you able? You're able to listen to things?
Well, I have to use up here
Okay.
because I'm legally blind.
I got it. All right. So you can't see how good looking I am?
No.
You just have to trust my opinion. This is the perfect woman for me. She can't see me. All right. Thank you so much.
That's my pleasure.
All right.
It's my pleasure to know that It's true.
It is absolutely true.
Oh, it's
But
amazing.
here's the thing: if you tell other people that aren't awake, they'll think you're crazy.
That's right. That's right.
That's their problem.
No, I believe it. I believe it.
Yeah.
Oh,
So good, right? I'm glad we met.
I'm so happy.
That's awesome.
That's awesome. It's right.
All right, I'm gonna, this is what I did. I was visiting my mother, and I asked who the oldest, most lucid person was, and they introduced me to Ruth. Ruth, right?
Yes.
And
right.
I encourage anyone else that has access to an old age home to do the same, because there's not many people like Ruth left that remember these things. We also talked about the World's Fair that she attended, and she said that the lights were the most amazing part.
Amazing thing.
Yeah.
I never got over that. I never, all my life, it's right there. The lights were so bright, and living in the darkness for so many years as a child, all of a sudden the world opened up.
Amazing. All right, Ruth, thank you.
Thank you. I'm amazed. I'm so happy to know it's true.
It's true, and God created this world.
Yes,
and He's right here in the clouds above, close, not in an infinite universe. So good, right?
And I can't get over it. Made me cry.
Made me cry too.
Yeah. Thank you. Thank you.
All right, Ruth, give me a hug. Here we go.
I need it.
All right.
Thank you.
All right, bye-bye.
Well, a clip like this is almost hard to watch, isn't it? What an adorable little lady that had her red pill moment at 102 years old. Yeah, it makes you emotional. Now, this is a very complex matter, and it needs to be presented step by step. So I will start very gently by asking some basic questions that I myself had a time ago, so I can guide you into the subject gently. As I mentioned before, I am obviously a bit nerdy, and I've always asked questions that are not supposed to be asked. And when provided with unsatisfactory answers, I get irritated and go digging for my own answers. We've all been stargazing on a clear night during our lifetimes, looking at the moon and its splendor shining away up there, and always taking it for granted as something that is just there and ever present in our life, without asking, what is it really? How did it get there? What does it do? School never provided these answers to me until very recently, thanks to the liberation of the biggest library of all times, namely the internet. We're all being told that the moon is up there, gravity-locked to Earth, and spins around us in a controlled manner every day. My first question to the teacher, who was always annoyed with my silly question, was, if the Earth rotates, why does the moon only show one face? Why is it always the same? Does it not spin too? No, it does not. It is the only heavenly body we know of that does not rotate on its own axis, and it just happens to be our moon. How lucky are we? We have moonlight at night when the sun is on the other side of our so-called planet, providing us with daylight, so photosynthesis can occur. It works like a clock, day in and day out. It's perfect, God's creation. This is in fact all true, but I have some basic questions. So to do this, I need you, dear listener or viewer, to find two balls. A tennis ball will suffice for this experiment. Now, hold one of the balls in your hand and place the other one some 10 meters away from you in order to simulate the distance to the sun. So the distance ball is the sun, and the one that you're holding in your hand is planet Earth. Now look at your ball and imagine a tiny little ball, the moon, spinning around your hand-held ball. And look at this first image that I show you here. Now, the moon is spinning around our Earth at the same speed as the Earth, 1,674 kilometers an hour, but does not rotate. If it does not rotate, how is it we can only see one face of the moon at all times, regardless where we are? It is always the same face. This is what this illustration on the screen shows you, how the Earth is spinning in one direction, the moon is following the Earth. But regardless where we are on Earth, north, south, east or west, we will only see one face of the moon. So I will show you a little clip below here. That is an animation, of course, because real videos do not exist for some reason, of how it supposedly works. And it's realistic enough to make the point. But, as this video will demonstrate, you will see that the moon does rotate, but just enough to always show only that specific face. The dark side is never visible, has never been seen, and never will be. Now, NASA claims to have been up there and spun their satellites around it several times, but never taken a picture or a video of the dark side for the paying public, which is me and you. I wonder why. Let's see this short clip. So, from that little clip we can understand how the moon is going around the Earth and how the moon is actually rotating, because it has to, somehow. Otherwise the whole narrative would just fall, right? It wouldn't make any sense. But again, this is an animation. This is not reality. Like everything else we see produced from NASA or from academia, it's never real. So let's go here, because maybe I did misstate, because there is a picture, and this is hilarious. This is a picture taken from beyond the moon, and it's really insulting, thinking of how dumb they think we are. Top picture is a picture of Earth taken from the moon's surface, supposedly. Look how small the Earth is. Then they go behind the moon and take a picture of the moon and the Earth. Look how big the Earth is. Now both these pictures are from NASA. These are official pictures from NASA. Let that sink in. So yeah, it's hilarious, isn't it? Now let's discuss the moon and the sun's interaction with our planet. Here is where it gets a little bit nerdy, so I beg you to pay attention very carefully here. Now the moon is illuminated by the sun, supposedly. Are you still holding your ball in your hand? The sun emits sun rays that are hot. Thus the light is indeed hot and heats up our realm, correct? Now this is correct and cannot be argued. But if the sun reflects off the moon, when the light from the moon is measured, the light from the moon is cold. How is that possible if it is indeed a reflection? It's not possible. And so is the whole heliocentric idea. Let me show you an interesting little PowerPoint graph I have produced here in order to explain. Now, how can the moon be illuminated by the sun when it's behind the shadow of the planet? In this simple illustration here, I'm attempting to explain three basic premises regarding the relation to these bodies in relation to our planet. If you look at your screen, you will see Earth, you will see the moon. There are two moons here. One is between the sun and the moon, and the planet, sorry, and one is behind the planet. All those arrows, the orange arrows you see, is the sunlight traveling from the sun to the planet. 94 million miles, as it says above. That is the exact distance, we are being told. Now, the sun rays travel 94 million miles to reach us. Look at your distant ball. Where is it? Look at it now. Now, you take the ball in your hand and you tilt it by 1 centimeter sideways, just at a small angle. Do you think that tilt has such an effect on your ball to change the seasons from north to south so drastically? When these sun rays are traveling that far? No. The same sunshine hits the entire surface of our ball at the same time in equal measure and in equal strength. So that 23.4 degrees tilt that you see on top of the ball, the planet Earth, supposedly is enough to give us winter in the north and summer in the south, and vice versa. That is what academia tells us. This is how seasons are explained by academia, and it's utterly ridiculous. This does not work and does not convince me. They must do better than this. Now, seasons will be explained better further on, so be patient. Now, this also explains how the sun is exactly 400 times bigger than the moon, how the sun is exactly 400 times bigger than the moon, and the moon is exactly 400 times closer to the sun from the Earth. What a remarkable coincidence. Now, this is supposedly what generates eclipses. The moon just happens to be the exact size of the sun when they meet. It's almost magic, isn't it? It's just as magic as the moon reflecting the sunlight from a position behind the Earth, where it absolutely has to be, or we would not have daylight on one side and nighttime on the other. So how is the sun, this is point number 3, how is the moon illuminated when in this position, if the sun is on the other side? How does that work? Well, I'll tell you, it doesn't. Now, the stationary flat model explains this exactly, and it's glorious. It all makes sense, including this lovely little clip here that I have found. And look closely how the moon travels around and behind the sun. And beware, this video was filmed in 2024, 8th of April, in the US. And this was before all these AI videos became a thing. So this is a real shot. Take a look at this shot and tell me what you think.
Hey, NASA was supposed to shoot rockets at it. Oh, wow. Whoa, look at that. What's that all about? What is that? Yeah, what is that? What the hell is that? What is that, man? That's not. Yo, man, what was that all about? What happened? Where did it?
Now that's a real video, folks. If you didn't catch it, please go back a few minutes or so and watch it again. Why is the moon going in behind the sun? How is that even possible? What are we watching here? So this was not a solar eclipse then, was it? This was on 8th of April 2024. Big solar eclipse, everybody spoke about it. But what you see on the video is what actually happened. So what are we actually looking at here? What is this? Now, speaking of reflectivity of the moon, let us confront this issue in a mature and data-driven way. What do we see in the sky? A spherical object, you say? Okay, let's go with that premise. Now you look at your ball and you tell me how the sun's rays can reflect back on a ball which has a convex surface. Let me explain this further. On your left side, you will see what a concave surface looks like compared to a convex surface. Okay, the moon, being a sphere, has a convex surface. Now, on the right side here, you will see what a sphere reflecting light looks like. You see that dot in the center? I'm sure you can see the problem as well as I can. A convex surface would focus the energy in the one spot. We would never see a fully illuminated ball if it was shaped as a sphere. You know what would? A flat plane disk. But I digress on this point, as this will be explained later on. I'll give you this good little picture here as a reference. If you're ever feeling real dumb, just remember, some people think this moon is being lit by an object behind it. Indeed. On your right side, you have a rock reflecting sunlight. It's daytime, so it is indeed reflecting sunlight, isn't it? And the below picture is, this is a glowing heavenly body. How do you equate these things? How do you make this thing happen if we are looking at a space rock? We don't. We just can't. Okay? So moving on. More on the seasons, because this is a very big issue that cannot work in the existing heliocentric model. We mentioned before how the tilt of the planet cannot possibly justify the change in seasons. But there is another, even more important point that proves the fallacy of this absurd premise, namely the Arctics. The North Arctic and the South Arctic are supposedly bathed in the same amount of light. 6 months in the north during northern summer, and 6 months in the south during southern summer. When there's winter in Sweden, there is summer in Argentina, South Africa, and Australia. This is a fact, and it cannot be dismissed. It happens every single year, as we know. The North has a climate that allows for seasons. They have short but beautiful summers, with wild growth, abundant animal and plant life, as close to the pole that we can imagine. Same in northern Russia and Canada. Winters are very long and dark, and that's why I escaped. Now what happens in the south? We have constant cold, no plant life to speak of, and almost non-existent wildlife, except the penguins, of course. Now, how is that possible? If both poles are receiving the same amount of sunshine each year, the ball is a ball, right? The ball does not discriminate. But obviously it does, somehow. The ice in the south never melts, even in the summer, while in the north, large swathes of ice are navigable, So much so that Russia is opening up shipping lanes in the Arctic Sea. There's a lot of talk about that lately, isn't it? I will let the clip here by one of my heroes, Eric Dubay, explain it. He is incredibly bright and one person I would suggest you to follow religiously. He knows his stuff. Here we go.
Flawed current model even places us closest to the Sun, 91,400,000 miles, in January, when it is actually winter, and farthest from the Sun, 94,500,000 miles, in July, when it's actually summer throughout much of the Earth. They say due to the ball Earth's tilt, different places receive different amounts of direct sunlight, and that is what produces the seasonal and temperature changes. This makes little sense, however, because if the Sun's heat travels over 90 million miles to reach the ball Earth, how could a slight tilt, a mere few thousand miles maximum, negate the Sun's 90 million mile journey, giving us simultaneous tropical summers and Antarctic winters?
Here we have another short clip from him explaining exactly what I said before regarding the Arctics. And he's 100% correct. This is fascinating.
If Earth were truly a globe, the Arctic and Antarctic polar regions and areas of comparable latitude north and south of the equator should share similar conditions and characteristics such as comparable temperatures, seasonal changes, length of daylight, plant and animal life. In reality, however, the Arctic and Antarctic regions and areas of comparable latitude north and south of the equator differ greatly in many ways. Thomas Winship says, "If the Earth be the globe of popular belief, the same amount of heat and cold, summer and winter, should be experienced at the same latitudes north and south of the equator. The same number of plants and animals would be found, and the same general conditions exist. That the very opposite is the case disproves the globular assumption. The great contrasts between places at the same latitudes north and south of the equator is a strong argument against the received doctrine of the rotundity of the Earth. Antarctica is by far the coldest place on Earth, with an average annual temperature of approximately negative 57 degrees Fahrenheit and a record low of 135.8. The average annual temperature at the North Pole, however, is a comparatively warm 4 degrees. Throughout the year, temperatures in the Antarctic vary less than half the amount at comparable Arctic latitudes. The northern Arctic region enjoys moderately warm summers and manageable winters, whereas the southern Antarctic region never even warms enough to melt the perpetual snow and ice." Thomas Winship wrote, "This uniformity of temperature partly accounts for the great accumulation of ice which is formed not on account of the great severity of the winter, but because there is practically no summer to melt it. In the Antarctic there is eternal winter and snow never melts. As far north as a man has traveled, he has found reindeer and hare basking in the sun, and country brilliant with rich flora. Within the Antarctic Circle, no plant is to be found. The island of Kerguelen at 49 degrees southern latitude has only 18 species of native plants that can survive its hostile climate. Compare this with the island of Iceland at 65 degrees northern latitude. 16 degrees further north of the equator than Kerguelen is south, yet Iceland is home to 870 species of native plants. On the Isle of Georgia, just 54 degrees southern latitude, the same latitude as Canada or England in the north, where dense forests of various tall trees abound, the infamous Captain Cook wrote that he was unable to find a single shrub large enough to make a toothpick. Cook wrote, "Not a tree was to be seen. The lands which lie to the south are doomed by nature to perpetual frigidness, never to feel the warmth of the sun's rays, whose horrible and savage aspect I have not words to describe. Even marine life is sparse in certain tracts of vast extent, and the seabird is seldom observed flying over such lonely wastes. The contrasts between the limits of organic life in Arctic and Antarctic zones is very remarkable and significant. Vegetables and land animals are found at nearly 80 degrees in the north, while from the parallel of 58 degrees in the south, the lichen and such-like plants only clothe the rocks, and seabirds and the cetaceous tribes alone are seen upon the desolate beaches."
That's it. North and south, summer and winter. and it makes no sense whatsoever on a ball. Let's move on. We're being told that the sun is 94 million miles away, and its rays reaches us in 8 minutes sharp. That's the speed of light. It makes me giggle every time I read about us having to fear coronal ejections and solar flares, because if this was true, and the sun rays indeed travel here in 8 more minutes, why are you even warning me? What could I possibly do? And why do they say, we will have a solar flash on this day or that day? How would they know? It's all theater. When this sunlight reaches the Earth, it is all-encompassing. As we already shown, the entire subjected sphere would have straight sun rays reaching it. Like this. Here you have the sun, the Earth, and on the right you have a rendering. That's a composite and a digital image, okay? That's not a real picture, because this never happens. It has never happened, and it will never happen. If the sun traveled 94 million miles, when hitting us, it would have straight lines all the way down to the surface, as you can see on this rendering. Yet, when the sun hits our clouds, we have something called crepuscular rays. That was mentioned before in this video, the first video, in the NASA documents. Remember that? Now they look like this. Now this does not look like a sun that is 94 million miles away, but it looks much more like a local sun, closer to us. Crazy thought, right? Now we can make a simple experiment and show that this is the case just by doing a little experiment like this that I show you on the screen. So basically you take a disk, you make a few holes in the disk, it could be a coffee table or whatever. You put a light bulb on top of the coffee table and you measure the distance. You keep one light bulb really far away and then you move it closer. This is how you obtain crepuscular rays. When you have a long distance, the rays are down flat, straight to the surface. When the light bulb is closer to the surface, you get crepuscular rays. That means they go in 45-degree directions. That is a scientific and physical fact. You can try it for yourself. Now, call me kooky, call me wacky. I am just reporting what I can already see for myself. And so can you. So now, finally, to end this section about our moon and sun, let us discuss the elephant in the room, which is gravity. Newton had an apple falling on his head, and the theory of gravity was born. Note, theory, okay? Just like a conspiracy theory. I have reached the conclusion that this is absolutely pseudoscience, much like all the rest of academia. It's garbage. Let's watch this clip regarding the moon's gravitational pull on Earth, creating tides and such. And we'll see you on the other side.
Newton also theorized, and it is now commonly taught, that the Earth's ocean tides are caused by gravitational lunar attraction. If the moon is only 2,160 miles in diameter and the Earth 8,000 miles, however, using their own math and law, it follows that the Earth is 87 times more massive, and therefore the larger body should attract the smaller to it, and not the other way around. If the Earth's greater gravity is what keeps the moon in orbit, it is impossible for the moon's lesser gravity to supersede the Earth's gravity at Earth's sea level, where its gravitational attraction would even further outtrump the moon's. Not to mention the velocity and path of the moon are uniform, and should therefore exert a uniform influence on the Earth's tides, when in actuality the Earth's tides vary greatly. Furthermore, if ocean tides are caused by moon's gravitation, how is it that lakes, ponds, and other smaller bodies of standing water remain outside the moon's grasp, while the gigantic oceans are so affected?
Interesting, right? Why is the moon affecting only oceans, but it doesn't affect rivers or big lakes? I grew up on a lake in Italy, as I mentioned before. I have never seen a tide on a lake. It's still made by water, right? So why doesn't it affect large lakes? Interesting, right? Let's move on to the next clip where he explains it even in more detail, and this will take a while, so please be patient.
Gravity is an unproven theory made into an assumption and treated as a fact. The entirety of astrophysics begins with the assumption that gravity exists, then continues forward. It is in complete violation of sound scientific reasoning to bypass necessary verification of some aspect of science and regard it as fact. If we were to allow this violation of the necessity of proof required for gravity, science would immediately lose all its foundation of validity because anything goes at that point. We can all acknowledge the fact that sometimes when we do our laundry, a sock comes up missing and is nowhere to be found. We don't have a sound explanation for this, so maybe we invent one. Gnomes. Let's now declare that because socks go missing, and we don't know why, that it is necessary enough proof that it must be gnomes taking our socks. Thenceforth, it becomes acceptable to claim it a fact that whenever a sock is missing from your load of laundry, that it was taken by gnomes, seeing that they're now real even though we have never detected or seen said gnomes. Now the purpose of this text is to introduce you to alternative, valid reasons for why things fall, float, and rise, using only concepts that have been or can be observed or verified, centering around the concepts of relative density, and nowhere in this definition is there need or room for some ad hoc force called gravity. The example with the gnomes and missing socks sounds ridiculous, and is meant to, but this example follows strictly the guidelines set upon us if we allow non-proven assumptions to lead our physical sciences. To relate that back to gravity, one has to realize the same steps were followed in defining gravity. An apple drops, and Sir Isaac Newton didn't know why, and couldn't rationally explain why with the current verifiable scientific information, so he made up a force called gnomes. Gravity. Up until this current day, gravity has never been detected, proven, observed, or even consistently mechanically defined. Since its conception, the theory of gravity has been described in three distinct ways. First by Newton as an inherent property of all matter, making all matter attracted to all other matter. Then later by Einstein as the curvature of space-time. And then finally by quantum theorists as a result of hypothesized subatomic particles called gravitons. If gravity was actually an inherent property of all matter, just imagine if that were the case. Do you think if you threw a handful of marbles in space, that all the marbles would start orbiting each other and stick to one another? Do you think they would then begin orbiting around and sticking to you, the relatively much more massive object? So everything you throw out into space would eventually just come back like a boomerang? Really? Scientism apologists will say that gravity is too weak between objects of human-sized proportions to exhibit any noticeable attraction to one another. But if that's the case, then how were the initial molecules attracted to one another that then later formed the Earth? If there is no observable attraction between a baseball and a tennis ball, then what causes the original hydrogen and helium atoms to attract one another? Let's consider the second theory that gravity is actually a bend in space-time. This term, space-time, which Einstein created, claims that points in space are now defined as events, and time is now a fourth physical dimension existing alongside length, breadth, and thickness. As Einstein critic Gerard Hickson wrote in his book Kings Dethroned, while claiming time as a fourth dimension, Einstein explains that by dimension we must understand merely one of four independent quantities which locate an event in space. This is to imply that the other three dimensions which are in common use are independent quantities, which is not the case, for length, breadth, and thickness are essentially found in combination. They coexist in each and every physical thing, so that they are related. Hence, they are not independent quantities. On the contrary, time is an independent quantity. It is independent of any one or all the three proportions of material things. It is not in any way related, and therefore cannot be used as a fourth dimension. The third and latest definition of gravity comes from quantum theorists, who have created hypothesized subatomic particles that no one has ever seen, called gravitons. In other words, they're passing it off onto the only field of science, quantum theory, where it is explicitly claimed that anything is possible, and which translates over to, we are now free to postulate anything we want beyond any logical structured field of science, and the guidelines that normally negate incorrect ideas about the universe are now lifted, making us exempt from scrutiny and rebuttal. Seriously, how do you already have a name for something you haven't even found yet? In short, gravity is simply nowhere to be found, and they're just trying to push its existence beyond the scope of any field of science, so we never arrive at the answer. And they do this because there is no answer, and as science progresses, it is forming concrete, demonstrative proof that gravity does not exist in the realms in which they claim it does, so therefore they have to push it just beyond our grasp every time we get close. That's the nature of their so-called proofs for gravity. They conceptualize it, name it, define physics around it, and then leave out the crucial step of discovering it. This is not science. It is science fiction. Discovery and demonstration in science are the most crucial factors, not ones that can be skipped or held off until a further time. Now I know what your smart ass is saying. Yeah, it's been detected. Watch this pen drop. But in order for that to be factual, you have to prove against all other rationale the reason that pen drops is uniquely the act of gravity and nothing else. To make matters even worse on you, by definition of gravity, you have to prove how all matter attracts all other matter indefinitely, and how that concept is why the pen is falling towards the ground. Imagine an empty plastic balloon dropping to the ground because gravity pulled it. Now, let's add mass to that empty plastic balloon, thus increasing the force of gravity. But this mass we add is gaseous, helium. Now let's release this once dropping balloon with the added mass of helium, which increases the force of gravity, and what happens? The balloon goes up? If gravity is pulling everything down towards the Earth, including the empty plastic balloon, why should adding more mass in the form of helium to that balloon suddenly cause gravity to be completely negated, allowing the balloon to rise? There is no force in physics that would propel an object in one direction, and if you increase that force, it sends the object completely in the opposite direction. It's just a fact of nature. If X amount of forces push an object Y amount of feet, then increasing X will only increase Y in the same direction, assuming both X forces are also in the same direction. So if the force of gravity pulls the empty balloon down, then adding mass to the balloon only increases the force of gravity in the same direction, yet the balloon travels completely against gravity all the way up into the sky and requires no fuel or energy input to do so. If gravity is a downward acceleration, then why would anything move upwards? Mainstream science claims that the reason the balloon moves upwards is because of buoyancy, which is a result of the heavier, more dense air being pulled under the helium balloon, thus making the balloon rise up, right? But on the flip side, don't they claim that all objects of different masses fall at the same rate? So why would gravity pull air molecules down harder or faster than it would the helium balloon if objects of different masses all fall at the same rate? Quite simply, a helium balloon is not pulled to the ground, as there is no mythical pulling force, nor is there a downward directional bias. Everything seeks its relative density with the medium surrounding it, and that is all. A feather and an anvil will both fall at different rates because one is radically denser than the air, while the other is not. This debunks the supposed uniform speed of acceleration due to gravity, 9.8 meters per second squared, which would more accurately be labeled something like the maximum acceleration towards density equilibrium. As long as something has enough mass and is aerodynamic enough to negate the air resistance of the fall, objects will fall at the same rate of approximately 9.8 meters per second squared. When in a vacuum chamber, the factor of air resistance is removed completely, so everything, even feathers, balloons, and dandelion seeds, will fall at the same rate. So, for example, a hammer and a feather have different masses, but fall at the same rate in a vacuum. This shows that mass is not the deciding factor of why things fall at the rate they do. This is shown to be true because if you change the mass, the rate of descent is not affected. Now, what they are falling through is the same medium, a vacuum. So let's change the medium and see if that changes the rate of descent. If we change the medium to air, the hammer very slightly changes its rate of descent, and the feather more drastically changes its rate. If we change the medium again to water, the hammer drastically changes its rate of descent, and the feather would begin floating. Therefore, the change in rate of descent of objects clearly has nothing to do with mass, and has everything to do with the object's relative density to the medium surrounding it. Objects of different masses fall at the same rate in a vacuum because they are falling through the same medium, and the rate in which they do so is dependent on their relative density compared to that of the medium. Gravity is said to attract all matter with mass towards all other matter with mass. Now, if gravity is strong enough to pull an empty balloon down, then it must be strong enough to pull even lighter, less massive things, for the simple fact that mass is the measure of resistance something has to forces. Since gravity is a monopole inward pulling force, and more massive objects are less affected by the momentum caused by it, then gravity should have no trouble pulling helium particles towards the center of the Earth. They should in fact be much less trouble than pulling the molecular chains comprising rubber elastic polymers that constitute a toy balloon. Therefore, there should never be any anti-gravitation motions by any matter, seeing as gravity is only pulling one way and uniformly across all molecules. Think of a flowing current in a river. Everything you throw in the current will either go in the direction of the current, approaching zero as the object gets more massive, but what you won't ever have is an object you throw in the current, and without any energy spent, it travels against the current, especially lighter or less dense objects. This anti-gravitational movement defies other known sound laws of physics, and only does so because they made a wrong assertion, and they fudge in gravity to piece together all the violations of other known laws of physics that don't allow for such illogical motions or phenomena. Rather than contriving this counterintuitive nonsense they call gravity, let's look at the world as if it's a flat plane going on infinitely up and infinitely down. If one is to assume the universe is infinite, then it is not in violation of any action against infinite properties to say that an infinite universe means there's an infinite amount of matter, and to arrange this infinite matter to form what we observe to be our reality, which is that there is a density gradient in which we exist, where all matter below us is more dense, and all matter above us is less dense. Now, rather than assume the existence of having a gaseous atmosphere hovering around a ball in a vacuum, which violates many laws of physics, instead, imagine we live on an infinite plane with a density gradient. Solid matter forms the land below us, less dense matter forms the fluids on top of that, and even less dense matter forms the gaseous atmosphere we have above the solid surface. Now, it's not to say that space is a vacuum, but rather, as we climb further up the density gradient, eventually we reach a point where any particle is more dense than the lack thereof any particles, or the void. Since the void is less dense than any gaseous particle, or any particle at all, it supersedes any particle, and thus arranges itself above the particle atmosphere. Space, in this instance, would not be a vacuum, but rather a gradual taper in density up to the point of there only being a void. And this void, since the universe is assumed infinite, goes on forever, simply for the fact that any particle would be sunk down below it. Also, I made the mistake of saying that gaseous particles are the least dense form of matter, when in fact highly charged plasmas are actually the least dense form of matter. And seeing that these plasmas have an excited and high energy level, that, along with the fact that heat rises, as well as less dense matter rises, you then have scattered bodies of radiant plasmas in the skies, much further than the gaseous atmospheric band of gas molecules. And these plasmic luminaries exist in an environment of such little friction that they themselves move about at such immense velocities whereas to create the stellar motions. Now one should take into account that plasmic matter also forms magnetic qualities, either positively or negatively charged, or both at dipoles, so much so as to cause these objects to spin individually and also rotate collectively around the central northern magnetic pole in the center of the flat Earth plane. So none of this proposed violates any known laws of physics and offers no contradictions as to its mechanics and function, which is more than can be said about the ludicrous ball Earth model, which is cram-packed with violations, fallacies, and incoherence of known physical laws. To think that the reason you are pressed to the ground is because the ground is constantly pulling you down is as flawed as saying a helium balloon rises because the ceiling is pulling it up. Clearly, in this example, it is not the ceiling of the auditorium pulling the balloon to it, because if you remove the ceiling, the balloon still rises, having nothing to do with the ceiling. So if this is true, and is proven to be so, then one can conclude that the reason we are pressed to the ground has nothing to do with the ground, but rather that the ground is just a barrier in the way of our trajectory down the density gradient. As anyone can test for themselves, as you remove the ground from under you, you continue to fall downward until you're met with more solid barrier matter. So if we were to remove the ground completely, we would descend down the density gradient until we reach the point of density equilibrium in which we would float freely amongst other similarly dense matter. And once this point is reached, particles can float about freely in whatever direction they want. Hence why air molecules, being in their density equilibrium point, neither fall nor rise, but rather flow about freely moving whichever way the wind blows them. Now, as humans have a density equilibrium point a little above water, and hence why we fall through the gaseous atmosphere but float up in water, and coincidentally, while in water, we can move about in all three-dimensional directions, something we can't do in air, and this lines up perfectly with the scientific notion that we are upwards of 70% water, which would mean that the remaining 30% of us that isn't water is comprised of matter less dense than water, and hence why we float in it. And although some of that matter, like bone matter, is more dense, other parts, like the air in our lungs, and therefore all throughout our bloodstream, average out the remaining 30% of non-water matter. Now, one must realize that it takes no energy to remain afloat on water, like when doing a back float, but it takes much energy for birds, for instance, to stay airborne in the air, because they are not at their density equilibrium point when flying. In conclusion, let's consider the following proven facts of physics versus the supposed effects of gravity. It is a fact that objects set in motion in a straight line in a frictionless environment continue to move in a straight line, while objects at rest remain at rest. Unless gravity exists, then whatever object launched the original object into motion would cause the object moving in a straight line to eventually slow down, stop, and start heading back towards the launching mechanism. It is a fact that a spinning tethered object, once the tether is broken, immediately starts traveling in a straight line tangent to the circle it was rotating around. Unless gravity exists, then objects will just continue to orbit with or without the tether, as they claim the sun and planets do. It is a fact that any non-adhered substance or object on the outer surface of a spinning object will fly off from the equatorial line of rotation. Unless gravity exists, then everything just perfectly sticks to spinning objects without there being the slightest outward push from the spin or inward pull from gravity. It is supposedly a fact of gravity that objects of different masses all fall at the same rate. Unless you have a helium balloon handy, in which case it won't fall at all and will rise upwards instead. It is supposedly a fact of gravity that two objects of appropriate mass will orbit each other based solely on their relative mass to one another. Unless you require an actual demonstration, an empirical scientific experiment showing it, in which case it has never been done. And the questions continue. How or why would huge solid planets orbit around a giant flaming ball of gas? What is orbit, and why is it never observed, but is the reason why the Earth goes around the Sun? And the Moon around the Earth, but nothing on any smaller scale ever orbits? Why would water stick to the outside of a convex surface? How do we stick to the outside of a ball? that's spinning, and orbiting 32 times faster than a bullet. How does an object spin forever without ever succumbing to friction? How does the Earth propel itself to remain in constant motion around the Sun without any fuel or burning any energy to sustain such immense velocities? How does the Moon go around the Earth with no energy required at such a grueling pace? How does any of this take place without any form of energy consumption to maintain these outlandish motions and velocities? All of these questions present problems that the theory of gravity simply cannot explain. Can you see how many facts of physics gravity just brushes by the wayside? But we do believe that we have an explanation. You know how beyond 10 miles out to sea, the laws of the land no longer apply, because you are no longer in any national jurisdiction? Well, that is 10 miles horizontally. What most people don't know is that if you travel 10 miles vertically, you're no longer subject to the laws of physics, because you're no longer in any academic jurisdiction.
I know that was a very long and complicated explanation, but it's the best one I found online. Eric actually lays it out pretty clearly. If you didn't understand, please go back and watch it again, because this is fundamental to understand what the hoax we're actually living in. Now, to round this up, before we jump into the next rabbit hole that I'm attempting to explain, if I haven't lost you already now, please do listen to this scientist in 1965, what he thinks the moon is. And remember when Eric said that the less dense gaseous substance is plasma? Listen to what this interesting old scientist said back in 1965.
Well, now, one thing, you have a theory about the moon, and we expect to be able to get observable facts about the moon fairly soon. What is your theory?
Well, it is by now rather more than a theory. 10 or 11 years ago, I stated to various scientists that the moon is not a piece of rock, but it is a plasma phenomena, cosmic plasma, and that this fact will eventually be confirmed. I made certain predictions which were already confirmed in 1958, and the situation now is coming close to a complete confirmation.
What will be the result if you're proved to be correct in your theories?
The result will be profound and decisive, because it will give proof that a complete reinvestigation of the laws of nature is necessary. Because if the moon is a plasma, no man will ever land on it. The self-landing attempts will all fail. That means that the mass of the moon is less, far less, than is currently assumed. It's in a different state of energy, and it has far less mass. That means there is no more explanation for the tides. If the moon, for example, had only 1,000th part of its current mass, then the tides would only be 2 inches high under conventional theories instead of sometimes 14 feet. And that means that if it is proved that the moon is a plasma, then all gravitational theories are out, and the new concept of the cosmos and of its laws has to be evolved.
Aren't you being a bit adventurous, though, because you know we're going to be able to test out your theories on the moon fairly soon?
Well, not anymore. 11 years ago, of course, it was rather taking a risk. I was considered a lunatic, of course, but by now the evidence, accumulated evidence, is already so much in my favor that I'm not taking any risks anymore. On the contrary, there is scientific views expressed all over the world now that the moon seems to be of a quite different nature of what was assumed.
But the Americans and Russians are thinking of landing men on it.
Well, that will never happen. Not on the moon. On Mars, on Venus, on other planets, yes, but the moon is definitely, as I assert, a plasma.
So now maybe you understand why I put the NASA chapter before this, because everything I'm showing you here relates back to that. Okay? It's a good ground to stand upon when talking about these kind of subjects. So, if you haven't left me already, we are now going to enter into chapter 9.2, which is also very interesting and crazy. It's called Why Does It Matter and What Do We Observe? So we present some more evidence about impossibilities in academia and what we are being told. So I hope to see you there, everybody. Thank you very much for sticking with me so far. And that's all for me today. So, max out, and peace to you all.